Sup people, welcome to 1,000 Words. My name is Radu, I'm a street photographer from Romania, and while some things never change, just like my appreciation for good beer, so cheers. At the same time, some things change, often, surprisingly, and in significant ways. This year seems by now to have been a year of change because while I started out in 2024 shooting Fuji, quite enthusiastically so, I was really happy with my X-T3. I had just left Sony and vintage lenses, and I had no intention of ever going back. I was really enamored with the Fuji, with the entire ecosystem. By March, I was already really disappointed with it. There's a video on the subject. To make a long story short, it was due to malfunctions. I had 3 bodies break on me, so that felt really bad. So by March, I had already switched back to Sony, back to vintage lenses yet again. Although, had you asked me about this at the beginning of 2024, I would have said, you're crazy. So I had every intention to just stick with Fuji. As it often seems to be, our plans have nothing to do with reality, oftentimes. And you know, there's that saying, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans. Because, yeah, you never know. You never really know. Moving on, another significant change that happened this year came a bit later on. It was late September when, and this too is the subject of yet another video. It was late September when I decided I would give up on vintage lenses and go shooting with autofocus, modern, contemporary lenses, the very same lenses I shunned in so many of my other videos where I said they were soulless and sterile and lacking character and clinical and devoid of feeling and too sharp and yada. But yet again, necessity proved to contradict my desire, because I had every desire to keep using vintage lenses. But once I realized it was in my own best interest to use the best tools available, and when the best tools available proved to be autofocus lenses for my type of photography, it's no longer the case of what you want, but rather the case of what you need or what's best for you. So at the very beginning of October, it was when I purchased the Sony G 40mm f2.5. So that brings us to today, which is mid-December. It's when I switched back to Windows after almost 7 years of using Linux exclusively. Together with Windows, I am now using Lightroom yet again, despite all the shenanigans and all the bad press that Adobe has been getting recently, which is entirely merited because they have been doing some pretty shoddy stuff. But still, I find that they do offer the best bang for buck currently, because while in a perfect world I would prefer to use something like Capture One, I find that it's entirely too expensive. 30 euros per month just for a raw processor is something that's just a bit, well, I'll be honest, a lot too expensive for me, considering I have other subscriptions I need to maintain monthly. So that's not even something I'm considering. But I'm paying now like €9.50 per month for Lightroom, for Photoshop. And hold that thought, because there is a third added benefit that I've been very happy to discover lately. So yeah, while I was almost like an evangelist, I had it in all my bios on all my social networks that I was a Linux enthusiast. And sure enough, I was very enthusiastically using Linux. For several small reasons, and one big one, I am now using Windows. And I have reached the point where I had to give up on raw therapy as well. So there's a few things I need to unpack on the subject. Why give up Linux? Well, while it has been working pretty damn great for all these years, recently there was this nagging thought that started to, well, nag me just in the back of my head. There was this thought and feeling like I was missing out. It's FOMO. And the thing I was feeling like I was missing out on was actual performance. Because not necessarily the case as far as, let's say, video editing goes. It's certainly the case with gaming. And while I play just enough to be able to say I do, which is very little, there's still the unavoidable truth that most games, if not all, perform about 20 to 25% worse on Linux than they do on Windows. So I paid close to 2,000 euros for my current laptop, upgrades and all, only to leave about 20 to 25% performance on the table just because I wanted to use Linux. So that kind of felt odd. It's quite a lot of money. And it felt like a real damn shame not to be able to use everything that I bought, because something like 5 to 10%, and even 10% seems like a lot, but in the neighborhood of 5%, it's in the margin of error territory, so that can be swept under the rug. But 20 to 25% performance is not something you want to leave on the table. So I started flirting with the idea of going back to Windows. And I did attempt a few installs of Windows, only to promptly switch back to Linux, because I just had gotten just so accustomed to Linux that it was really hard to switch. Then there was a bit of trouble I've been having lately with GNOME, and the fact that Wayland on NVIDIA simply doesn't work as well as it should by now. Color calibration is iffy. There was this bug with the file manager that it froze when you made it full screen, which has since been resolved, but it's besides the point. The thing with Linux is that you constantly have to maintain it. And while on the one hand, I do enjoy tinkering with configuration files, and sometimes you just want to get work done. And then there's the fact that I gave Lightroom a try on one of those installs I mentioned, those brief installs, because it never lasted me more than a couple of days. And I was just really, really surprised how easy it is to edit photos. It's so easy that it felt like cheating. I've gotten so accustomed to raw therapy. I've gotten to know the software so good that I have developed quite a really fast and efficient workflow. But still, I do spend a couple of minutes with each photo, but still, it's going back and forth between modules and pages and exporting to GIMP to finalize the image, because I never really felt like raw therapy could do it 100% all. So when I gave Lightroom a try and processed a few RAWs, I was amazed at how easy and how quick it is. It just felt like cheating. I would process an image, just pull a few sliders left or right, and I would be done with it in 30 seconds. And I would be left kind of surprised, like, is that all? I mean, am I done? Is that all? Am I done? Is there not anything else I need to do? And sure enough, there was not anything else. The image looked great. Oh, I should also mention the noise reduction. While all the time I claimed I enjoy noise, and sure enough, a part of me still does enjoy the aesthetic. There was this one photo that I made a point out of processing both in raw therapy and in Lightroom. And the AI noise reduction in Lightroom is just stupid. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it can it can really clean up an image like nobody's business. It shouldn't be legal. I mean, and there's no discernible loss of detail as well, and it's just fantastic. While looking at the pictures side by side, the difference blew me away. The one I processed in Lightroom was just so much cleaner, so nicer, it looked so good that I was basically sold on Lightroom there and then. Then you might ask, why not use raw therapy on Windows? Because it's certainly available on Windows. And there's two good reasons why I'm not planning to do that. First, because I did try it in the past, and it neither looked as good, neither worked as good on Windows as it did on Linux. It was slower, it was choppier and laggier, it felt like, and certainly doesn't feel like it belongs in Windows. And you know my thing with things looking cohesive, and I have a thing for good UI, and it really feels out of place. It looks bad, it works worse than it does on Linux, so it's not something I really felt like doing. Furthermore, on the subject of looks and good UI and UX, there's also the fact that it's quite undeniable that Linux is nowhere near as polished and refined as Windows is. For all its flaws, Windows is really, really spiffy. And especially with Windows 11, it has gotten to a point where it's really a good-looking operating system. It's also working great. NVIDIA integration is unparalleled. It's really, really fantastic. It looks good. The interface is fantastic. I love it. It's really a good-looking operating system, really sleek and polished, good design. And it works great, and that's what's most important. Let's take, for instance, the parallel between GIMP and Photoshop. Well, I don't necessarily use a lot of raster processing, and well, GIMP has served me quite well for all these years. It was always with a heavy heart that I used it because it was really damn slow. The interface is really damn ugly. It's nowhere near. And Photoshop, also Lightroom compared to raw therapy, they're just much more refined. They're fancier, they're slicker, easier to use, while at the same time being powerful and capable, with the exception of the comparison between raw therapy and Lightroom, because I think that raw therapy is somewhat more capable than Lightroom is, at least as far as really offering a lot of in-depth features. But at the same time, there's about 60 to 70% of that program that I never ever use. So what's the point? What good is it to me to have all those features I never use? And when it comes to local editing, to masks and selective color editing, and let's not even get into the fact that denoising is simply last generation of raw therapy. Lightroom is just better, easier, nicer, and the subject detection masks and generally masks and local editing is just so much nicer on Lightroom that it's really no contest. And all those things, together with the fact that Windows just looks nicer. Sure enough, GNOME can be pretty. I never really liked KDE Plasma, but GNOME can be pretty. It can be really pretty. But Windows is just more mature, and it's really refined, like a really distinguished gentleman. A space-age distinguished gentleman, but you get my point. And I am at that point in my life where I appreciate simple things. I appreciate doing things easily. I appreciate doing things quickly because that allows me to get on with it and actually do the stuff and go back to what's important and living my life. And while fun, because this certainly is, working with photography and processing is certainly fun, it's just still work. What's important is spending time with my family, with my wife and my baby daughter, And I just want to do things easily, quickly, efficiently, elegantly, nicely and cleanly, and go on my merry way. So for all these reasons, and perhaps more I forgot to mention, and to put a nail in the coffin of my entire experience with Linux for the foreseeable future, because you will soon realize why I'm pretty much stuck here. While in the past I was able and afforded to quickly switch back to Linux on a whim. Now I have to stick with Windows. And sure enough, I'm not claiming Windows is perfect. It has a lot of flaws, and there's quite a few things I mind about it. The fact that you have to debloat it when you install it. The fact that there's all that telemetry, the whole recall business. It's really stuff that sits really badly with me, but I've made the website. Yay, hooray! I'm really happy about it. 1kwords.ro, by the way. Designing a website or owning a website was something that I've wanted for the longest time. It always felt like such a thing that's out of my reach that I never really entertained the thought seriously enough. Because on the one hand, I knew there was hosting involved. On the other hand, I knew there was web design involved, and both these things seemed like such a prohibitive expense and endeavor that I never really seriously tried my hand. Once or twice I talked to people about designing one, and I was quickly discouraged by the costs associated with designing the website. Some people quoted me upwards of thousands of dollars, which is insane. Absolutely insane. I would never pay that much for a website. And the hosting site, the traffic, the allotted storage always felt like just too little for too much money. Until I found a really good hosting provider for really peanuts. I mean, I'm paying, what is it, like €6 for 25 gigs of SSD storage per month? That's stupid. And that comes with all sorts of protections and a lot of things. I'm not really knowledgeable enough to just quote anything, but it's just a really good offer. And then comes the part where I made my very own website on my own for free. Well, sort of, because for $9.50 a month, I have Lightroom, Photoshop, and Adobe Portfolio. That's freely included with my photography plan, and that allowed me to build my very own website. Now, I have absolutely zero knowledge when it comes to web design, but I was able to do it. It didn't take me more than, like perhaps not even 6 to 7 hours, span across 2 or 3 days of actual work. So I have a fully functional working website of my own, designed by these two hands at no additional cost. So now this is why I'm saying I'm stuck with Windows. Whether I like it or not, I need to keep using my Adobe plan, because well, it seems like a trap, and perhaps it sort of like is. It's really good bang for buck. And there's that trick, where if you threaten to cancel, they ask you if you want 2 months for free. So I'm paying $9.50 for 3 months. My next payment is in March. And that's a really good deal. It's a really good deal. So I have to maintain my Adobe subscription if I want to keep updating my website, because it's done through Adobe Portfolio. And to be honest, I think it's fine. $9.50 a month is just, it's cheaper than my Netflix subscription. It's less than I pay for beers on a night out. It's really not a lot of money. Now, I realize this may seem like bad news to some of you, because conceivably some of you subscribe to this channel or watch my videos for the very reason of me talking about vintage lenses and Linux. And here I am, steering clear away from both of these for the foreseeable future. I'm going to be using Windows and Lightroom and modern autofocus lenses. I won't be doing any raw therapy tutorials, and this has been a bit of a tough one because my ultimate beginner's guide to raw therapy is by far my best performing video on the channel, and it's gotten thousands of views, many thousands of views, and dozens of comments. Everybody has been so appreciative, and it seems like I did a pretty good job with it because people are enjoying it. It has proven helpful to a lot of people, and I'm happy it has. I'm happy to be of help. But I'm saying this was a tough one because it's not something I'm going to be able to do now. Sure enough, I could use raw therapy on Windows, but I don't want to. So I want to say sorry. Those of you that are here for the Linux side of things, for the vintage lenses side of things, I'm sorry you will no longer find content that interests you here. And at the same time, I'm really not sorry because this whole business with the YouTube channel has always been about this ugly mug right here, this nerdy fellow, this bearded guy that likes to drink beer and talk into a camera, talk a lot to say a little, but still it's what it is. It's about my experience, it's about my thoughts, it's about my impressions, and it's about me. I'm sorry if you felt otherwise, and this is not to say I don't appreciate the fact that you give me your time and watch this video, but I always thought that the very fact that this is so personal, that it's the very thing that interests you. While I am sorry to let down a few of you, at the same time, I'm not sorry because the very main thing is me putting out there my authentic self, my true self. It was never about showing anything other than I am. And this is what I am. Now, I'm not the vintage lens guy. Now I'm not the Linux guy. So that about brings me to what's next on the channel. Remember, I have a giveaway going. Watch my previous video. Participate, good luck. Then there's a slight possibility I will do another video around Christmas when I usually do my end of the year retrospective. This has been a somewhat like a channel update, looking back on things. And as far as looking ahead, I'm working on two lens reviews, the SONY G40mm f2.5 and this fellow. I don't think you can see because it's kind of dark, but this is the Sony Zeiss, the Sonar 55mm f1.8, a hell of a lens, the sharpest lens I have ever used by far. There's no contest. It's absolutely fantastic. The XO Mark talked about this when it was launched. I can't remember when. I think it was 2013, but they said it was, save for the planar, the 50mm f1.4, it was the sharpest lens ever. Well, I'm not sure if that's still the case, but it doesn't really matter because this lens marries two very important characteristics as far as I'm concerned. Good sharpness and good character. It's really sharp and it's really characterful. But more about that in a review soon to be launched on the channel. I will also try to do a video where I review Lightroom from the perspective of someone having used free and open source software for the last, now, like 7 years almost, 6 years and change. I want to look at Lightroom with the eyes of somebody seeing it for the first time, because it practically is. I haven't used Lightroom since 2015, something like that. And I plan on doing some tutorials in the future. I want to do some processing videos. I want to do some book reviews. I know I've been talking about book reviews for long, but I never seem to get around to doing them. This has been it. Thank you for watching. Thank you if you decide to continue to watch my videos. And if not, I fully understand. Time is very limited, time is very precious. Use it for what matters, use it on what you enjoy. If you no longer enjoy my videos, that's completely fine. I think I'm gonna wrap things up here. I have been Radu, this has been 1,000 words. Just a chit chat on where things are regarding my interest in photography right now. I'll see you next time. Be well.